Get up, get ready, it's time to be woke. Take off your shades, it helps see through the smoke. Cause the wicked hide behind the cloak. And if you stay in the mist, you gon' be soaked. So listen up, cause this hair of the dog. What's real, what ain't, is this the fog or smog? Cause there's a difference when you breathe it in. So don't let the corporate media take you for a spin. This that morning show, they put you in the know. So I hope that you ready, cause all we do is go, go, go. Yeah, come get your info, you gon' be like, whoa. Hair of the dog, we bout that, ayy. We in the zone, we out here, yeah. Speak.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Hair of the Dog. I'm Andy Kennedy on this fine Wednesday morning. Thank you for tuning in. Big show for you today. We have a nice cold front, cool front over my location. It's ushering in some nice, unhumid, coolish, windy air. I know there's a lot of Americans that don't appreciate that, but when you go through the winter that we go through, you have an appreciation for kind of like a maybe room temperature and above outside temperature. Especially when here in Ontario we're still under pseudo quote unquote lockdown, so there's not a lot of places to go still yet anyways. But regardless of that, again, thanks for tuning in. I would like to introduce my lovely and talented co-host, Miss Carrie Barber. Good morning, Carrie.
Good morning, Andy, and good morning to everybody who's tuning in. Thank you to all of our syndicated stations. It's overwhelming and humbling. So we just keep getting picked up on different networks. So good morning to everyone. And if it's your first time watching us, we want you to know that this is a conversation between all of us. We present some information. I've already posted some links in our chat. So if you want to join in, all of this information is available to you, source documents. Let's have a conversation because this one really affects you. We're talking about big tech, surveillance state, Big Brother, and free speech, particularly when it comes to political commentary. So drop something in the chat. We'll address it. Be nice, be civil. We're all family here. And we really don't care which political side of the aisle you come on. We're all in this together. So welcome and thank you for joining us. So Andy, any thoughts before we get started? Because this one's really complex and I want to kind of go through it slowly.
Yeah, there's a lot. Not that this week is any different than every single week since 2016, but there is a lot going on right now politically that people need to be aware of and what those implications are, because we're in a world of spin right now, right, where everybody's got their spin on how they want to portray the news and what it looks like, and you're getting it from all angles, and we understand that it's difficult to to weed through the chaff of different narratives and different maybe gaslighting points that you'll hear from others, but it's very important in it. And there's lots of things going on right now that have some very serious implications, including your personal freedoms and, even how we communicate on the left in this progressive space. And so this is one that you really want to pay attention to. And so I think that's a good segue to start, Carrie. What do you say we get into it?
I sure do. So first up, let's round this out in context, right? So for those of you who follow Rome Bethia, who just called me, Rome, we're live. I cannot take your call right now. But Rome has been harassed online in an unusual way. He is being targeted by a bot farm, and he's got some allegations that it may be actually funded by a larger group. But we've seen it, and I've seen him on a large broadcast on Fred Hampton Leftist, where there's a huge spike in comments, and they're all bots. Bots meaning it's computer driven. Somebody is orchestrating all of this. So I just want to call back to remember, you know, it's not supposed to be legal or ethical, but yet it's being done and heavily financed, particularly by political operatives. David Brock is one of those. So I did post a link in the chat. If you're not familiar with who David Brock is, David Brock was a Republican opposition research fellow who came with, I said Republican, who came with Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton and then switched parties. He didn't switch his tactics, but he started working for Hillary Clinton in the 2015-2016. So he is the founder of Media Matters for America, American Bridge, the 21st Century, and then he started an offshoot company that was nothing but troll farms. And they were working on behalf of not only Hillary Clinton, but they have been working for Biden as well, allegedly. So all of this activity goes into manipulating political free speech and elections, but that apparently is okay. There's no law against it. Nobody's brought anything against it. You can complain all you want. He's David Brock. He's got backing from real big folks. So Rome Mathia is going through something similar right now, and I've reached out to him to see what kind of information he's got. And it led me into this research that I have been doing. This topic, this particular case and topic that we're going to talk about today, came from one of our longtime viewers, Mike Tollers. So good morning, Mike. And these two things kind of go together in a third context. So we have private actors, private citizens. Well, where's big government in this? And this is where I want to lead into it. So I did post a link this morning, the White House briefing. We're going to start there. So the White House briefing memorandum, this came out on June 14th, 2021. This is the senior administration officials briefing the press about counterterrorism actions. And this particular day was focused on internal, what they call terrorism actions and disruptors. What they were actually talking about, and they've characterized it as far left, far right. Not particularly in this memo, but this is kind of the offshoot that we're seeing online. So this briefing was about an ODNI threat assessment that the White House has published and what they're going to do about it. So they came out with a plan to work with counterterrorism and incendiary folks to minimize the risk. So this is the Department of Justice, the Federal Bureau of Investigations, and Department of State, intelligence officers working in tandem with the White House to mitigate what they see as a risk from some of these groups. So what they're saying is, and I'm reading directly now from the memo, I posted the link. The first pillar of their action seeks to understand and analyze and share domestic terrorism related information. It builds directly off the ODNI threat assessment. Our goal is to enhance domestic terrorism analysis and improve information sharing through law enforcement at the federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial level, where appropriate with private sector partners. I'm going to repeat that last line again to make sure that you understand it. Our goal is to enhance domestic terrorism analysis and improve information sharing throughout law enforcement at the federal, state, local, tribal, and territorial level, where appropriate with private sector partners. And then it goes on. So first, I'd like to remind everybody, what's the definition of fascism? Okay, so here we have the White House talking about they're working with private sector corporations. And this is the part that I think we really need to focus on when we talk about counterterrorism data and what's happening in the political free speech space. So with this particular subject, you don't necessarily have to agree with the political ideology or the words that are being said by a person. Like, for example, I'm not a fan of the Proud Boys. I am definitely not a fan of alt-right racists. However, the moment that I start to curtail their right to speak is the moment that I have gagged myself. And right. So when we're sitting here in the space of the progressive space, and we're looking at these different topics from a perspective of who it makes it uncomfortable to cringy, still free speech. There are legal limits, legal criminal limits to what I can say without the government stepping in. But I still have a right to say it and cross that line, right? So this is where free speech and political, I guess my perspective, Andy, and you and I have said this, is I have never feared having an alt-right person come on our show. I have never feared having a far left incendiary personality come on our show, because I'm confident in progressive policy and being able to explain it and based on facts and have a good conversation, refute some of the evidence that they are providing. I know it's not factual. So I am very comfortable with letting them speak and refuting it and making sure that the general audience has that framework to go by.
Yeah, absolutely, right. It's an exchange of ideas, right? But that doesn't imply that the ideas that we're exchanging are necessarily good or productive. But that starts a greater conversation that if I'm confident in my own position and my own belief system, then I could prevail in a quote unquote debate armed with the facts that I have, right? And so that's one thing that I think that any of the pundits on our side or even the other side of the political spectrum would say is completely missing right now, right? This full cup, closed-minded, tribalist divide that separates the U.S., and nobody's willing to exchange ideas. Nobody's willing to budge an inch because I have to be right. I can't be happy. Right.
Yeah, that's exactly. Okay, so I want to get to comments. Lisa's like, hello, running a little bit late today. Yes, Lisa, we were, and we were trying to work out our text.
She doesn't know us very well, does she?
We're always like, girl. But yeah, it's we were working out tech issues before we went live. So good morning, Amber. And then we have I love this moniker, Propaganda Live. Good morning, and Propaganda says, love you all. Comments on the private-public partnership and suggests that we have Skeptical Mantis on your show to let him sell us all on Civil War. Sure. I mean, I'm a lazy stalker as an investigative journalist, so I would be sucky at Civil War. Right?
Yeah, and I don't even own a gun, so just put me in charge of logistics.
Yeah, there's that. So I've got plenty for you. Absolutely. So Amber says, busting out of echo chambers and having a hard conversation with people we don't necessarily agree with in good faith is vital and so lacking. Even folks like Joe Rogan getting trashed just for being willing to speak to folks is detrimental in free speech. Right. And that comes from a fear perspective. If I, we saw with Bernie Sanders went on Joe Rogan, oh my God, no. No, you need to have those conversations. And I had often said, if things really went sideways, and they would have to for me to become president, I'd be on Fox News every morning. I'd be calling in every morning. Hey guys, I heard what you said. That's bullshit. And let me tell you why. So when particularly on the left, when Twitter canceled the account of former President Donald Trump and everybody cheered, I was like, oh, because people on the left they are bombarded with all of these negatives for the opposing team. but they don't see what's going on, particularly in the electoral space, for good progressive candidates who are challenging the corporate incumbents. Whatever they're doing to the Donald Trump types, it's far, far worse for progressive candidates. And people don't see that part of it.
Absolutely. That's, the minute the people that we had people cheering that Donald Trump got thrown off of Twitter, that exact second is when you gave them permission to throw you off Twitter as well.
Just for your political free speech. So there's a concept here in the United States, again, in the political space. If somebody's running for office, or you have an elected official and you make some comments about them and they hit you with a lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit, it's called a slap lawsuit, and they're not allowed to do that. And I believe it's 32 states that have these slap lawsuits to protect your free speech, so that because a lawsuit for the average folks who are behind on a rent payment, behind on a mortgage payment, where a medical bill will set us on our asses, getting hit with a lawsuit, a defamation lawsuit, is catastrophic. So what these laws say is, if I, as a politician, try to sue you for saying something I don't like or I'm uncomfortable with, then you have the right to petition the court to hear your case. And not only would you be found in the right for your free speech, but then I have to pay for your legal and damages and everything else. That is the way for the courts to kind of even things out, so that these big political players can't just have a run of things, right? Most people aren't aware of that. So it is the Citizens Participation Act, the name of it in most states, or some variation thereof. And it's designed to protect free speech. So what we have now is a situation where we have private corporations who have in court said that they are merely publishers and cannot be held liable for what someone else says, now acting as the arbiters in political free speech to remove accounts. So they've gone beyond publisher to something new. And so we're all in this area we've never been in before. So the court cases and legal framework and regulations have not caught up, except for this case that we want to talk about today. So Amber says, the new decentralized social media platform, Panquake, hope I've got that right, Panquake, can't.
You have it correct.
Okay. Can't come fast enough. Facebook, Twitter are killing our movement. Well, here and again, right? It's the suppression of that. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about. David Williams, good morning. He says, Americans are so authoritarian and reactionary. This same social media ban combo happened after Alex Jones was banned nearly everywhere. Leftists cheered on that too, and then got banned themselves. That's exactly right. So all of this ban, and then it's the arbitrary rules on this private corporation. Like, if Rome, going back to Rome, how many times has Rome been banned because of somebody else being butthurt about something he said, right? So
and I think it's important, if you'll indulge me just for a second, Carrie, if you don't know who Rome is, and I think we're assuming that everybody does, and if you don't, then shame on you. But Rome Thea is identifies as a communist, originally from Detroit, is been through the ringer of living in that Michigan city of the place that American democracy has forgotten. And
well, let's clarify. Rome grew up watching his friends die, watching a 16-year-old friend die because he was tased to death.
Well, but the thing that I wanted to bring up, that currently Rome is on a tour of different places in the United States where he's going there and having an event. He raises money himself by asking for donations and doing whatever, and then going out and buying supplies for people having an event to give them out to, poor people or homeless people or single mothers or single parents or whoever, right? So this is someone who is very selfless, but very straightforward and very opinionated about his own life and what he does. But this is just the kind of person that these platforms want to silence because they're completely against the centrist, elitist, apologist narrative that we see, that the blue check marks get the majority of speaking points, right?
That's exactly right. And let's go back to he's an out and proud a communist. Communists are one of those groups that is targeted as an extremist group. Why is that in a country that has political free speech? Right. So I am personally not a communist, but I believe that they should have a right to speak. Sell me on your ideas, sell me on your policy. Let's talk about that. But instead, just it's the C word that you can't say. So somebody like Roman's going to be targeted by the White House policy. And furthermore, even our broadcast talking about it, we can be targeted. And we've seen that over and over again. So this is where political free speech matters. And I go back to Donald Trump, who's still trying to overturn the election. And they had all of, so they had the recounts and the court cases, and all of them got thrown out. And then they had the audits. We just went through the audits. So he was still grumbling about, well, I could still be president. Here's the thing. Let him say that stuff. Let him say it. And we here on our program, because we deal in facts, we were like, okay, here are the 35 court cases. Here are all the Republican judges who threw it out. Here are all the Republican county clerks who certify the results over and over and over again. And the reason that's important is not just the pushback, but because the people are watching and we get the opportunity to educate them on how local elections work. It's not DC, it is your county clerk. Your county clerk, the person the person whose kids go to school with your kids and who goes to the same grocery store as you, same person that you elected. We get to have that opportunity to educate people so that they can see the grift when it's happening.
Yes.
And that's why it's so important. So important. So okay.
So I don't know, Carrie, if you saw this yesterday, but apparently there was an announcement from House Leader Nancy Pelosi that said that she was starting a commission or some type of group entity that was going to investigate the January 6th incursion, right? And why is that important? Well, if you're looking in the rearview mirror all the time, you can't see what's ahead of you, right? We saw that with the 4 years of we have to investigate the Russian connection. Why did Trump win? Why is that significant? Who did what, where, why? The, Rachel Maddow-esque and MSNBC Russia narrative, right? Well, if you keep looking back, you're not going to look forward. And the DNC's game plan hasn't changed with the new administration. They keep doing the same thing to us, and people keep falling for it.
Oh, yeah, that's you bring up a good point. And we learned this under the Trump administration. If there's a deflection over here, oh no, what's coming on the other side that we're not supposed to see. So
well, they did that. We had 4 years of that, right? That even if you're still caught in that lesser of two evils argument about 2020, right? It at least was nice to not hear the voice as often, from the PTSD that hearing Donald Trump's voice now triggers a lot of people. I understand that, right? That's not what we wanted to concentrate on when that was happening, but at least it's nice to not hear it, right? Of having well, Donald, you did this and you did this and you did this. Yes, but Melania made me wear this shirt. It's the most horrendous shirt I've ever seen, so at least we don't have to deal with that.
Exactly. Yeah, we have a kinder, gentler version. So no, I'm not going to say they're the same because they're, we call out the celebration when it happens. But okay, so let's get back to our topic at hand, and I want to remind people of a Wall Street Journal article that came out. I did post a link to this. This was in September of 2020. And the title of this one was Twitter Partners Alerts Highlight Divide Over Surveillance. So this goes back again to Twitter's role and your information on what you post and whether you yourself are an extremist. And this goes to the Black Lives Matter protests. So those protests were about due process and equal protection. Those should not be extremist views. These are guaranteed rights under the Constitution. But because people were out there challenging why those rights are not extended to every citizen, why qualified immunity cancels out our constitutional rights, those were extremist views. So what was happening is Twitter, in this particular article and in Congress, oh, by the way, in their congressional hearings, they were saying that we don't share that information with government surveillance, the apparatus. But what was actually happening is they were giving the information to their Twitter partners, who I'm pretty sure paid for that privilege. So it was a revenue stream. The Twitter partners were more than happy to give it to government surveillance agencies. And what they were doing was the data partner was selling a service to law enforcement and other agencies. Other agencies isn't clarified, so it could be anybody that monitors Twitter on their behalf and provides alerts that includes information about potential demonstrations and possible criminal behavior. So it is not criminal to go out and protest. It is not criminal, Andy, to shake a fence. Yeah, that is not violence. And yet we saw what was happening. And then we also saw mainstream media try to spin all the Black Lives Matter protests as terrorist groups. So here and again, you had Twitter acting outside of what they said they were, which was just a mere publisher. They were working in concert through a third party to provide that information to law enforcement before things happened, right? Before you broke the law. They didn't do it on the January 6th thing, but they did it for the Black Lives Matter. So this was September 2020 when this was happening. So what else was happening in September? So this is where we want to get into the court case that we have on hand here. So there is, this is where I want to back up and say this particular gentleman, he's labeled as controversial for a number of different things. Some of it I question the controversial monitor because I think as a progressive activist, I'm controversial. But then other things, maybe it's legitimate. I don't know. So whatever you feel about this particular person, this is Dr. Shiva Ayyadurai, and he's a badass, brilliant guy in the tech space. So he's been doing this kind of work since he was 14, 15 years old. He's a 4-time MIT graduate, a PhD, a Fulbright scholar. This guy is off the chart smart when it comes to tech, maybe not so much in other areas. So we need to do a better job as people and not assigning brilliance all across the board. Like, who was Trump's attorney general, but dang it, the brain surgeon.
Ben, what's his name?
Yeah, Ben Carson.
Ben Carson, yes. The
Yeah,
picture,
that guy.
him and Christ in the bathroom in their bathrobes. Yes.
Yes, yeah, right. So Ben Carson's a good example. Maybe he's good at neurosurgery, but that's probably it, just that really small space, right? So, and I'm gonna say this because I know he's not watching. I'm married to one of these people who's incredibly brilliant in this narrow space. So it's my job to keep him from falling in a hole the rest of the time, right? So yeah. So this Dr. Shiva, he did the unthinkable. He challenged Elizabeth Warren's seat, right? So he was running as an independent because, as he put it, I believe that both of these parties are acting in concert to keep good people down, which is a message I absolutely agree with. So he decided to run for office. And what was interesting about the background on this particular his series of court cases is when he was running as an independent, he was originally invited to a Cambridge, this is all Massachusetts, a Cambridge debate between himself, the Republican, and Elizabeth Warren. And then there was controversy, and I'm not sure where this came from, use your imagination, where they were trying to uninvite him, and he's like, no, I'm already here, I've already met the measures. So then Elizabeth Warren canceled, and they canceled the whole event. And there were a couple times like this, whereas the independent, he kept getting pushed out. So he filed lawsuits, and he won. He won based on free speech and what they were doing to manipulate debates. And how many times have we seen this, right? We had Green Party candidates kicked off the ballots, or the Democrats saying, well, it's our primary. No, it is the nation's primary. You've got to have debates with all of these candidates, Tulsi Gabbard and all these other people. They just kept moving the goalposts, and that's not okay. And this particular candidate said, not only is it not okay, but I'm going to bring a case, and he kept winning. He kept winning. So this is kind of the framework I want to set for this case. Mike joined us. Good morning, Mike, who gave us this case, and he says, I'm going to tell him you said that. Please do. Hey, and good morning, Robin. Good morning. Thanks for joining the conversation. So, Lisa B says, can I speak into the mic more? You're hard to hear. I will do better. Thank you, Lisa. So with this particular case, and I posted the link on it, this case is interesting because what happened was, now, originally they were saying that he just wanted to get his Twitter account back. So it wasn't just Donald Trump, but it was Dr. Shiva and a bunch of other people who got removed from Twitter. So he brought this case in October of 2020, and it has since kind of snowballed. A part of this is the discovery process. So this Dr. Shiva maintains that he has uncovered information. If you go to the court case, the docket in Massachusetts, they've got a lot of the documents. They are all public because he's got a judge who is sympathetic to free speech, particularly in the public space of public elections. So here's what's interesting. He is suing William Francis Galvin of Massachusetts, Michelle Tassinari, Deborah O'Malley, Amy Cohen, and the National Association of State Election Directors. So this one kind of surprised me, this organization, the National Association of State Election Directors. Who is this? What group is this? What private agency is this? I didn't know what it was. So when I looked it up, it was a little surprising to me because by their own website, they are a group of, it could be county clerks, it could be elected officials, it could be all of these people who are concerned about how elections run. Well, you can fill in the blank as you want. So I always chase down the money when it comes to this. Follow the money, right? And on their website, they list it clearly. And if you go out to their FEC filings and their IRS filings, they are 501(c), which means all of their documentation must be publicly available. So if you watching this particular broadcast decide that you want more information about this non-for-profit agency, you can write to them. They have 7 days to respond, and you should get the information you ask for. If you do make this request, make sure it's very clear and concise, and you have your date field. So whether it's from Monday to Friday of this week or whatever date you put in, you've got to be very specific when you make this information request. And it can be, I'd like a list of your donors from 2001 to 2020, or however you want to word it. But every nonprofit must comply.
Yes, legally, they must comply with that request, and to the detriment of themselves if they don't, because then their 501c3 is in jeopardy.
Yeah, could be fines up to and including $1,000 a day. So the IRS outlines all of that on their website. Go check it out. So when I looked at their corporate partners, the ones that they list on their site, which I've also included the link to, their gold level is Democracy Fund. That's a nice little pack. Silver level is Cyber Defense and Democracy Live. Vote Tech and Ubico. That's an interesting one. Bronze level, Amazon Web Services, Ballot Tracks, Dominion Voting Systems, Election Systems and Software, Fort Orange Press, OPEX Corporation, Runback Election Services, Votas, and VR Systems. Those are the ones that they advertise right there. So what is alleged that this particular board was doing? Well, this doctor in his court case is pretty clear. He's saying that they have colluded. What happened is, he says they colluded in Massachusetts on behalf of Elizabeth Warren to manipulate what voters had information to, and that includes his campaign, debates, all of these things, and up to and including his own Twitter feed. By asking Twitter, a private corporation, to remove tweets, therefore, and he actually puts this in his complaint, acts as a cat's paw for quasi-government and outright government agencies and officials of the government. All of that is highly illegal. And it goes to the larger question of free speech. So whatever you may think of this particular individual, right, left, in between, QAnon, Red Pill, all of that, set it aside. This case may have legs. And the reason for it is because it asks the question, if a government agency or a government official is using a social media platform to suppress the free speech of an individual and or candidate, is that a violation of civil rights? And if the ACLU is watching, they would be all over this case too. Absolutely, because here's what's interesting. Here's why I think it has legs. We've seen these cases before. Like my own court case, we brought up a similar question about who actually owns elections and political free speech, all of that sort of thing. But we couldn't get the support. Weird. This guy can. Not only can he get the support, but he's got a judge that understands the implications of this question and says, we've never seen anything like it, that this case may set precedents. And oh, by the way, since these government officials are getting their legal defense paid for by you, the taxpayer of Massachusetts, I am going to appoint you a court-funded attorney. So that's what's happening, that level playing field. Because if you've ever tried to bring a civil case, it's expensive. Especially as a candidate trying to do ballot access or whatever else, you better have at least 60 grand set aside for that case. And here the judge says, I am going to remove the financial burden from you. And I want this to go forward. I want to hear it. And oh, by the way, all the documents are now public. This is a big deal. Yeah. So,
Because
okay.
it is, as you said, Gary, very precedent setting in the way that the DNC had the Green Party thrown off the ballot in Wisconsin, and any of actions that has happened that are similar to that. This is very overreaching consequences of any of those situations.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So Lisa said she's actually met Dr. Shiva while he was campaigning and wasn't impressed. I'm no Warren fan, but yeah, it's lame. She would debate him. True, true. I mean, you have the courage of your convictions, stand up there and stand for debate. But whether you were impressed with Dr. Shiva or not, this case, I think the questions that are raised in this particular case, very compelling, absolutely very compelling. So this is where I like the law and I like the way that it was written, because you take the personalities out of it and it gets to the basic bare bones question. So this is why I'm this. So I thank you, Mike, for bringing this to my attention, because this is not getting publicized anywhere other than the far right QAnon space, which is actually being used to diminish the entire merits of the case. So I didn't want to see that happen. Okay, and Blackjack's back with us. Thank you, Mr. Jack. And Blackjack says, so snitching has now been commodified and marketed for profit with the clear intention of circumventing the spirit and letter of our civil liberties, late stage capitalism, and empire collapse. Yeah. Well, okay, we're selling water. We are literally okay in Michigan. They got $200 from a major corporation to leach their natural resources that are required for life. And oh, by the way, profit in other areas. This should not be a surprise, right? So yeah, absolutely. It's commodified all of it. So you are the
Right.
product.
Well, that's the one thing that we understand about capitalist markets is they always need to be expanding, right? Because shareholders are the most important aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. So there was one article I did post here, which kind of cracked me up. This was from Universal Hub, not a publication I'm typically familiar with, but they tried to post. I'm not going to call it a hit piece on Dr. Shiva, but they were kind of snarky in their titling of how they cover this. So this was from May 21 of this year, and they titled it "Man Who Really Wants His Twitter Account Back Gets court-appointed lawyer to take on this increasingly convoluted conspiracy case." So from the rip, they're trying to diminish this. Yet, as you go through this particular article, it's like as they were writing this piece, they were convincing themselves, wait a second, yeah, this is a good case. So by the end of it, even they are like, yeah, they this could work. This absolutely could work because the merits of the argument, however flawed, do bring up some very good questions that we have yet to answer. Are these public spaces, the public squares, protected? If so, then even the private corporation who has created that public space cannot prevent somebody from speaking in it. So imagine Twitter is a public square, and you've got Donald Trump bringing out his little soapbox, and you got Nancy Pelosi bringing out hers, and Nancy Pelosi's like, I don't want him talking over there. So they kick Donald Trump out. That's illegal in the public physical space. Why is it okay for Twitter to do it? Because it's a private corporation? No. You have chosen to operate in a public square, right? So if I had to log in and it was private segmented to get to your comments, that might be a little bit different, but I don't even need a Twitter account to read what Nancy Pelosi puts out or Donald Trump. And in fact, all of these agencies have taken the same tack where AOC, Jayapal, all of them comment about their personal thoughts on public policy in these spaces. That makes it a public utility.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if you recall, when Donald Trump became president, right, he had his regular Twitter feed, and then he had um, Donald Trump, president of the United States, Twitter feed, which he didn't use, right? So there was a clarification on this part that his normal personal Twitter feed, because he was president of the United States, was the quote unquote official word from the presidency, right? And he got in trouble because he was using it to block people, right? And the reason why that's significant, if you recall, is because that um, Twitter channel, for lack of a better term, needed to be free and open to everyone because of the laws and because he was president. So he wasn't allowed to block people because then he was stopping them from having access to an official Twitter account.
Absolutely. And even in your local elections, your local space, your county board, your library board, there's this handy little provision there. If I am on your county board, and I've seen this in my own county board where they got busted. If I serve on your county board and I use my private email to address a question or to pass information back and forth, my private email is now FOIA-able. That's subject to the Freedom of Information. So one of the things when you get elected to these local offices is they admonish you never use your personal information or your personal accounts to address these things. Yet here we see AOC and everyone else doing that exactly with their Twitter, right? So their Twitter DMs, are those not subject to FOIA? Because they're doing official business through these accounts. And all of these are really great questions that will be addressed in this court case. So whether you love this guy, you hate this guy, you think he's a joke, he's not, whatever, this case matters.
Right. That's big. Irrelevant. This needs to be addressed despite who's bringing it. Right.
Yeah, exactly. So somebody asked me to post the case again. Mike, if you're still there, maybe you can post it. Here's a link to the actual court documents. So if you're going to look this up, it's easy enough to look up by the case number. So this is case 20 because it was brought in the year 2020. So 20-C as in Charlie, V as in Victor, -11889. So again, that's 20-CV 11889. And you can look this up, particularly in the Massachusetts docket, and you can see the motion to dismiss, the counter arguments, all of these things. So all of the motions to dismiss have been removed because the judge is like, oh yeah, there's some shit going on. I'm not saying that he's ruling, but he's like, no, we're gonna do all of this. Part of this is when if you've got good counsel, they are going to put all of these motions to dismiss because nobody wants to get to the discovery phase.
No.
Yeah. I love discovery phases. Yes, bring it. But they don't want to do that because it's all this documentation and email, all of it comes out. And because this is such a public space, first off, most court cases, with a very rare exception, all of the information is public. All of it's public because of free speech. So you can go out and read the counter arguments, the motion to dismiss, the responses, and even the judge's statements. These are all there for you to review. So once again, it's 20-CB-11889. And there's not a lot of legalese in these documents and these responses. So anybody can go and read it. And if they cite a precedent court case, you can look that up and read it. But the basic arguments are pretty sound here and ask some really good questions. So this is one that I'm personally going to be following. And like I said, whatever your opinion is, right or wrong, the court case is the public space for us to see this argument played out and kind of go through it with them and make up your own mind. Is Twitter a public utility, or is it just a publisher making money off of your use?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's why all of the different aspects of this case are so important, and why it is so exciting to watch this, right? Because you've got the fact that you have the freedom of speech laws, not just for, the average person, but for candidates, because they are more robust, as Carrie has mentioned, as well as the fact that these nonprofits are subject to disclosure laws, which are more robust than any other, corporate or business entity out there, and including the fact that you have a sympathetic judge in place. So this would be the perfect storm of a possibility of getting the proper result for this, right? So if it doesn't come from this case, it probably won't. That's why this is such an exciting endeavor to watch and to keep your eyes on as it unfolds.
Yeah, absolutely. And Facebook user, I can't see who you are, but they said all of the different aspects of this case are important. Absolutely, because for my point, I didn't know who this quasi-government election authority was. I didn't know. Now I know. So this is something I'm going to keep an eye on. What else are they doing? What are they getting into? Because as far as I understood it, I, as a voter in my state, get to elect my county clerk, and I get to look at all elections are at a state level, administered by your local county clerk and their offices. So I have a say, and I have direct oversight over that. So who is this other group that is trying to? I'm not sure what their role is, but I'm uncomfortable. I'm personally uncomfortable. You may be totally okay with it, and that's okay. Oh, hey, it's Mike Patino. Hey, good morning, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that came up in my research on this, and then also the court documents themselves. This is a really good way for you to become familiar with how the court cases work, what is publicly available and should be under free speech. And then I am kind of contemplating this as I was reading through it. I was like, wait a second. Is Twitter not the same as the telephone, which is a public utility, right? So I can make a phone call to Mike, and I can have a conversation with Mike. That's public utility. If I say something that is illegal, like if I make a threat or anything like that, then Mike has the option of reporting that. And then, of course, in some states, a lot of states, it's a one-party record. So Mike could be recording the call without my permission, but Mike is aware of it. He's one of the two parties. So he could take that information and he could, make a complaint, right? So is Twitter not the same? So I can post any damn thing I want. Doesn't absolve me of consequences of what I have said. And those consequences we have put into the criminal sphere. Yet Twitter has decided, because they're a private corporation, that they have community standards that are not published, or arbitrary and change daily, or at least allegedly seem
Right.
to
Not to mention, if you tweet anything that's cringeworthy, be ready for the onslaught.
Well, then that goes back to what we opened our show with, David Brock and his bots, right? So that's perfectly okay.
Yeah.
So
ask Steven Crowder right now how Twitter's doing.
Yeah. Well, that dude. Yeah, that's an entirely different subject. I want to. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely.
So I hope that this at least opens the door and gets you some exposure onto what free speech is, what it could be, and maybe get you thinking about what is public space and what isn't. even in the context of a private corporation who's profiting off your views. So I do want to thank everybody who joined in. Lisa, Robin, Mike, two Mikes, and then Blackjack, who always brings really good points. So thank you for that. David Williams, Amber, good morning, Amber, and I think I said Lisa twice. We just, so many of you make these conversations really compelling and worthwhile, and I so appreciate the feedback and your comments, even when you don't agree with us. So I really appreciate that. It's good to get the brain working, and I hope that you too will follow along with this case and let other people know about it, see what they think. Does it have legs? Does it not? So Lisa says, breaking through the irrational mindset that EW, I haven't had enough coffee. What is EW? That EW can do no, Elizabeth Warren, thank you. That Elizabeth Warren can do no wrong, and making people care about the implications of this case won't be easy. As educated as people are here, the cult of personality is strong. Then my suggestion, Lisa, is drop Elizabeth Warren out of this, because she's not a named person in the case at all. She's not named. She is her campaign and run set up the conditions, but she is not named as a defendant in this case. So with that cult of personality, you need to do nothing with it at all.
That's right. She served her purpose to the DNC and now is fading into oblivion.
Yeah.
So there.
So Andy, that's all I got. It's a huge complex case. It's a huge complex issue. This is again us just scratching the surface. Hey Holly, joining late. What's up, girl? But I hope that you will stick with it, and as it develops, more information comes out, I am definitely going to be watching this case. So Andy, words of wisdom, final thoughts, take us out.
Well, I'm looking at the time and thinking that we've talked for long enough, and personally, I'm annoyed by the fact that I got little or no sleep last night. So no, you don't get me today. Sorry.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Well, I'll make you. I'll gladly pay you Friday for a cheeseburger today. How's that?
With dad jokes on Friday. Let's do that.
Absolutely. There's always a plethora of those that are at the ready, waiting to make their little heads seen. But on that strange note, I will like to say again, thank you, Carrie, so much for your due diligence in your investigative prowess and your reporting. It's always top notch in my books. And we hope here at Hair of the Dog that you have a lovely day and enjoy the rest of it. We will see you here bright and early on Friday morning. Take care.
We bout that, ayy. Bringing the song, we out here, yeah. Spitting the facts, how it's supposed to be. Hair of the Dog, we keep it G. Whoa.